The March Metro North Committee meeting could come to order, please. Are there any public speakers?
We have one public speaker who's signed up. We ask the speaker to please adhere to the 2-minute limit and to address an item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. And who is the public speaker?
I assumed everyone knew. It's Murray Bowden.
Mr. Bowden, I'm having trouble hearing you. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes that are in your book from the February meeting? Second. Those in favor? Minutes are approved. Are there any changes to the work plan?
There are no changes to the work plan.
In that case, may we have the President's report?
Sure. I've had a busy month. I'm honored to have been named to the permanent presidency of Metro North by Chairman Loda last month, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in my new capacity, my new old capacity. Equally important, I'm so honored to be able to lead the talented professionals who work at Metro North and deliver safe and reliable service every day. So thank you all, and I look forward to working with you. On the safety front, I want to give you my monthly PTC update. We now have civil speed enforcement in service across all east of Hudson lines. This provides PTC protection against overspeed derailments due to exceeding permanent speed limits. On March 1st, we began operating our diesel equipment with civil speed enforcement, and our M7 trains on the Harlem and Hudson lines began operating with CSE on March 10th. Finally, on this month's agenda, we are requesting modification to our procurement to provide additional engineering support services for PTC, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that later. In terms of service reliability, the good news is we did much better in February, but that feels like old news now. In the month of February, OTP improved 3.9% from January, and trains operated above goal across all 3 lines with an overall OTP of 96.3. However, following a relatively uneventful February, March has been anything but uneventful. We had 2 significant storms towards the beginning of the month. On Friday, March 2nd, a storm bringing strong 40 to 60 mile-an-hour wind gusts dumped over a foot of snow throughout the service area. As a result, we experienced multiple trees down, especially along the Hudson line. As a result, I'm sorry, did I say Hudson? I meant Harlem. As a result, Harlem line service was suspended between North White Plains and Wassaic from roughly 6 p.m. through 11 p.m. so that our forces could remove the trees and repair damage to the third rail. 5 days later, Winter Storm Quinn arrived on Wednesday, March 7th, again bringing strong winds and very heavy snow across the area. We started the day operating a reduced schedule and experienced down trees over the course of the day, but beginning at 5:30, conditions deteriorated rather rapidly as the winds knocked down multiple trees across the territory. This resulted in a complete loss of signal power on the New Haven line, with multiple power poles also down on the upper Harlem line between Croton Falls and Brewster. By about 7 o'clock, service was suspended across all 3 lines because of the rapidly worsening conditions. We were able to operate patrol trains throughout the evening, bringing a lot of people home, but service was disrupted and essentially canceled throughout the evening hours. The following day, we operated a reduced holiday schedule, but were unable to provide service on either the Danbury or the New Canaan branch because of multiple down trees. On Friday, we started the day well. We were able to provide a full weekday schedule across all lines and branches. However, later on in the day, as we continued repairs to damaged power poles between Golden's Bridge and Southeast, The additional tension on power poles caused additional power poles to fall, which blocked both tracks between Croton Falls and Southeast. This required us to terminate service between those two stations and put a bus bridge, together rather rapidly that Friday afternoon. So this all happened about 3 p.m. We were able to have the bus bridge up and running by about 5. We continued to run the bus bridge through the weekend until about 8 p.m. on the Sunday. I want to thank our partners at MTA Bus who were extraordinarily helpful in terms of getting the bus bridge deployed quickly. We also called upon our resources in Westchester and Putnam counties, and everybody was enormously helpful in terms of getting the bus bridge up and running. So anyway, the bus bridge continued until about 8 p.m. on Sunday night, as I indicated, but this revealed a significant vulnerability in our system, and over the course of the next several weeks, we're going to have to do a series of emergency weekend outages to be able to continue to do the pole replacements, tree removal, and just to make sure that the poles in this particular segment are strong and resilient. So we're going to have to be doing work between now through the end of April. This past weekend, we had an outage yesterday. We bussed again yesterday, and we'll be doing busing over the course of the next, I don't even know how many weekends that is, probably about 6 weekends through the end of April to make sure that these repairs are effectuated and that particular pole line is safe and secure. I want to thank Metro North employees for all their work during this very challenging period. I think we were all sort of lulled into thinking that spring was right around the corner. It was not. March has been a really tough month, and my new employees have done an extraordinary job in terms of keeping our customers safe, informed, and I want to thank them. People have been working very, very hard. So now I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there questions?
Are we speaking to the statement at the front of the book? Is this the right time?
Which statement?
I'm looking at page 41 on your report on transit-oriented development. Is this the right time to do that?
No, we actually have information items,
Yes.
and that's one of the information items, so that'll be coming a little bit later.
Okay,
Is that okay?
thank you.
Mitch?
Are the poles Metro North responsibility
Yes.
or the utilities responsibility?
No, they're Metro North poles.
So they're Metro North
Yes,
poles
they're
itself?
Metro North poles,
The
yes.
utility just brings you the electric?
Well, these are signal poles. Yes.
Okay.
This is actually a Metro North pole line that runs from about Croton Falls to Brewster, and what that does is provides redundancy to our traction subsystems in the area. NYSEG actually provides one feeder at Croton Falls and one feeder at Brewster, and we use the pole line along our property to provide redundancy.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Well, I do want to say that our new president started with a difficult situation, and it's been handled very well by everybody in Metro North, and my thanks and the committee's thanks to MTA Bus as well. And I'm hoping that the rest of it goes smoothly.
We hope so, too.
Could we have the safety report, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. The safety report can be found on page 20. The customer accident rate is nearly 29% lower than the previous 12 months. The employee lost time injury rate is down slightly versus the previous 12 months. Our community outreach program TRACS reached nearly 1,200 individuals in January. And finally, we held our first quarter safety focus day on Tuesday, March 6th. We highlighted various safety topics to bring attention to those areas of concern, such as slips, trips, and falls, and overexertion. That concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Hearing none, we'll have the police report, please.
Good morning. And on behalf of all the members of the MTA Police Department, I congratulate Kathy Rinaldi on your appointment to President of the Railroad, and we look forward to continuing that close collaboration that we've had with you for quite a while. For the month of February, total major felonies are down by 8 system-wide. That's 26 crimes versus 18, or a decrease of 31%. Year-to-date, there were 49 crimes versus 43. That's up by 6, or 14%. Metro North Railroad, for the month of February, there were 14 felonies versus the same amount, 14 in February. 13 of those 14 crimes were closed by arrest. 8 occurred in Grand Central. Year-to-date, Metro North is up by 11 crimes. That's 32 versus 21. The year-to-date increase is attributed to 5 assaults on police officers and an increase in burglaries at particularly Duane Reade and Rite Aid. Those are shoplifters that return and then violate a trespass order and are then charged with burglary. There were no hate crimes reported in February. That concludes my report.
Questions? Commissioner Merdler.
I have 2 questions, if I may. There were 2 arrests for terrorist threats. What is this all about?
Well, that's a penal law charge. What that actually was 2 separate incidents of basically disorderly conduct. And during the arrest, they uttered terrorist-type threats. Like, for instance, in one instance, the emotionally disturbed person yelled out, "I'm going to bomb this place." Words to that effect. Same type of thing in the second incident. They were not credible. They were somewhat emotionally disturbed, but they were arrested and charged for that, among other charges.
Are you finding, second question, are you finding either a level playing field or increase or decrease in the number of disturbed or homeless people in places like Grand Central?
Well, things are leveling out. Since November, we've increased our homeless assistance activities. We have a dedicated unit of a sergeant and 7 police officers and a lieutenant that actually their sole duties are to assist the homeless. In locations like Penn Station and Grand Central, those locations are the focus. We're putting in a very large amount of resources, and we're getting a lot of results out of that. You know, if you look at Grand Central, we've actually had over 4,000 contacts with these individuals. And of those contacts, we are making a difference. Working with BRC, the homeless contracted provider, we've actually gotten over 20 people in Grand Central alone to actually go through the process and accept services. And these 20 are hardcore individuals that really need the help. We've identified at Grand Central 10 individuals, and the same thing at Penn, 10 that really are in need of services by way of psychological homes, and we're getting those services to them through accepted services. So this is an ongoing daily effort, 7 days a week. I'm using a lot of resources, and I am getting a lot of results. I think anecdotally you can see the difference at both of those locations, at Penn and Grand Central. You certainly see the uniform presence, which we're going to keep up.
And at 125th Street?
125th, absolutely. 125th Street, for the month alone, we've got over 712 contacts, and people accepting services are a little bit more difficult, but we have BRC up there, and we've had, I believe the number year to date, the number was 7 individuals actually accepted services and wound up with BRC in different locations.
Did I hear you say 712 contacts?
Yeah, and a contact does not mean 712 different individuals. This is the amount of time that we're actually having positive dialogue. It may be the same person 5 times, but we know these individuals and we're engaging them. We're asking if they need help. And we're also enforcing the law. If they are in violation, we're issuing summonses, and we're also arresting folks. And as far as 125th Street, it's more than just homeless there. We're dealing with the problem from the outside. We've increased our number of VTL summonses. We've increased our contacts with the taxis and the limousines that are creating that conducive atmosphere right outside the station at 125th Street. So it's really a multi-pronged approach.
I'm sorry to belabor this, but how are taxis and limousines creating that atmosphere?
Very simply, it is not a recognized taxi stand. However, some of our homeless individuals use the taxis as a means to solicit, open the door, hand out, creating a quality of life condition that's not good for our customers. So that's part of the focus to, again, a multi-pronged approach to creating an improved atmosphere over there.
Any additional questions? In that case, we have an action item. Mr. Gans, would you please explain this item to us?
I'd be glad to. Thank you. There's a joint railroad staff summary on page 29 of the book. In December, legislation was passed requiring the MTA to adopt a policy allowing customers to transfer unused fare balance for a period of 2 years after expiration. Our tickets don't work exactly like Metro cards. We can't simply transfer balance to a new card. So the railroads consulted, and what we're recommending is that we extend the refund period for a period of 2 years to be compliant with the statutes. If, assuming the board approves it, we will move quickly to implement this policy. With respect to e-tickets, we have a little bit more of a challenge. We're talking to the vendor who handles e-tickets for us, and we're looking for some software changes. We'll implement an interim procedure and then move to a permanent solution as soon as it is available. We cannot definitively determine the impact on revenue at this time, but we don't believe that there are a substantial number of tickets that go unrefunded after the present time to refund tickets. Regardless, we must comply with the statute. There is a current fee applicable to refunds, which will help mitigate the administrative costs. Accordingly, we ask the committee to approve this change of policy to be implemented by the railroads. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Morning. Why was the PAL amended in the first place?
This was something that the legislature took on. I think they were looking at Metro cards, but also the language is broad enough to apply to our railroad tickets.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second, thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now, if our president could present the information items, please. And this is your time, Chuck.
Yeah, I think the first of the information items, Chuck, is the annual Strategic Investments and Planning Study Report, which is in the book. But if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Now. First, I too would like to add my voice in terms of congratulating Kathy.
Thank you.
She has earned it and then some.
Thank you.
And she will do a superb job and then some.
Thank you.
Kathy, I read through the entire transit-oriented development material showing up on pages 41 through 43 of the book. I noticed the absence of two words: affordable for housing or moderate income for housing. Is it that we are disinterested? Because let me illustrate my point. On Mount Vernon West, the characterization is that we met with the owner of the former station building regarding his redevelopment plans. The owner is also developing 2 other high-rise apartment buildings within walking distance, and we requested information how it would impact on pedestrian access to and circulation around the station. No reference to affordable, whether we inquired or didn't, or moderate income. And the same issue carries through all of this. Do we continue to view our responsibility as so limited?
It looks like I'm just watching Bob. Oh, I was just watching Bob and Jen. I wasn't sure whether Bob wanted to speak to that in terms of our affordable housing. obligations. I know this came up with respect to the town of the Harrison TOD, and you know,
Can't hear you.
and I know it's a specific interest of the board going forward in terms of ensuring that there is some.
I'm sorry.
No, it was just, I saw Bob conferring with Janet. I wasn't sure whether Bob had something to say. This has been, as we know, a consistent concern of the board with respect to those partnerships that we form with municipalities to ensure that affordable housing, middle-income housing is part of those developments. I don't know whether either Bob or Kim can speak to that specific Mount Vernon West. I'm not aware of any conversations with respect
Words
to
are
affordable housing.
conspicuous by their absence.
Well, 2 points I want to make. One is that in Mount Vernon West, we are not the property owners. It is privately owned.
I gave that only as an illustration. It's not present in any of the TODs.
Well,
Okay.
let me speak to Harrison then, which is our TOD that's moving forward with agreements, negotiations, et cetera. In that, there's 143 new units. 7 of them are affordable housing that was negotiated up front and added to the, as
So-
part of the deal.
Where is this?
Harrison.
All right. So 7 units out of all the units of TOD along the Metro North right-of-way, right?
Well, so far, this is our TOD that's has agreements, is actually moving forward with the design, et cetera. So we're in discussions with the other locations, but this is our first and primary TOD.
Let me make your life a little bit easier, only because Mr. Pallier's life is already busy. Would you give us at the next board meeting an accounting as to what we are doing on affordable housing in the TOD areas? Can we do that?
Sure, we can do that, and I think, as Kim noted, it's a different picture depending upon who owns what property. But we can catalog the existing TOD opportunities in Metro North Territory and indicate what the status is with respect to conversations regarding affordable housing.
Can I make a point,
Thank you.
Commissioner? I recollect there was a board policy on this subject not too long ago, which basically directed staff to balance the requirement that we, in our properties that we own, we seek
I'm laying the
maximum value,
groundwork.
but also to defer to the localities with respect to their wishes, with respect to the balance of affordability.
I'm laying the groundwork for a motion to change that policy. That policy.
Mr. Pally.
I remember that conversation greatly because I was directly involved in it. Some of us, unfortunately not enough of us, felt that MTA should have a specific number, 10%, 15%, whatever the number should be, of affordable units on projects. And as the president clearly makes out, there's somewhat of a difference between properties that we own and properties we don't own. But even where we don't own it, there may be other issues that they need MTA support for, whether it's easements or other factors that come into play with regard to the development. So in some cases, we have more of a ability to influence the final outcome than in other cases. Having said that, at that time, I think that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we went through this. I think it was regarding the Harrison
Yeah, it was in
project.
connection, it was in connection with
regarding
Harrison, yes,
the Harrison
it was.
project was
It
the
was.
one that brought it up, but it was
Yeah.
not intended just to be a Metro North discussion.
No,
It was intended
that's
to be a Metro North Long Island Railroad discussion. In fact, New York City discussion. It was intended to be a all-encompassing discussion point. Chuck, listen, I firmly believe we have a role to play. We have a major role to play, especially when it's either on our property or next to our property, and the developer needs things, for lack of a better term, from an MTA agency, and I would be more than happy to continue to support a specific number, because I think without a specific number, it is much too nebulous. I know we decided to defer to the local municipality. Unfortunately, some local municipalities are more interested in affordable housing than others, and that's why I always felt that having an MTA number was an appropriate thing so people would know up front either if they want to build on our property or they want to build near our property and need things from us. Here's the amount of affordable housing you have to do, regardless of what the local municipality says. Unfortunately, at that time, the full board did not agree with that analysis or position. I'm more than happy to reconsider it if you want to reconsider it in that context.
May I?
Yes, you may.
With respect, your recollection and mine are identical, that the then Westchester County representative and the then Westchester County executive were stridently against any incursion, and I use that word advisedly, of affordable housing in the area. My point is very simple. It is exactly what Mitch has said. We have a public responsibility. And in some fashion, we have to take a good hard look as to how we discharge it. I have every confidence, Robert, in you and in Jano, and ma'am, I don't know you, so I will have it in you too. But I will tell you that it's time. It's past time. And I think you'll find an entire change of view in the new Westchester County executive. And I thank you.
Commissioner Vanderpool, did you have something to add?
Thank you. Yes, briefly. I agree with the sentiments expressed. I wasn't on the board at that time, but I would support a revision in how MTA approaches this. Having looked at TOD in both Westchester and Long Island for many, many years through my advocacy, I'm well aware how difficult it is to work with some local municipalities that are not amenable to this idea. In fact, many of us know that Westchester has 31 communities that are federally mandated to be more favorable to affordable housing. And the fact that the federal government has had to intervene in those 31 communities, I think, sends a strong message of the challenges that are encountered. But I think it would be a very good policy to revisit with a new composition and new leadership in Westchester, new composition on this board and new leadership in Westchester.
Yes.
Not that I could vote on it, but I think this is a very good policy for the board to stand for, especially since we're looking to maximize all other things that we can be of service to the community. I think we should revisit it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to add my 2 cents. The recollections of my fellow on the board at that time commissioners is what I remember as well. I suggest that this is an MTA-wide issue, not a merely Metro North issue. I recognize that Metro North became kind of the touch point for it with the Harrison development, but this is something that we need to do as a full board, not as a committee. Other questions pertaining to, yes.
Yeah, well, let me try to make it a little more complicated than it is here. And please don't construe my remarks to be that I'm in favor of unaffordable housing. American society generates inequality in 10,000 different ways that all of a sudden it becomes the MTA's duty to resolve. And in this case, I suggest that we have very short memories, and probably if we just stick around till the Finance Committee meeting, somebody's going to say something about value capture. And so that us taking a position here on devaluing the properties near the train stations, we take that position, okay, fine. Our job is to provide affordable transportation. And we provide affordable transportation, that property becomes more valuable. So you can't, there's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous, you can't save your ass and your face at the same time. And if you really want to do value capture, you can't be telling the developers precisely what to do. If you do, if that's a value of yours, these same communities can add more housing tomorrow and drive the price down. These communities are substantially downzoned, substantially built for the exclusive character of those properties. For us to turn around and say, well, we have a property next to the train station, why don't we make this one affordable? And then turn around and say, I don't want to hear the word value capture if you're going to say we have a responsibility to do affordable housing. Now, housing policy is not job of the MTA Board, transportation policy is, let's do our job. And I think, you know, there's in California now, there's been a state legislation that mandates upzoning near transit properties. That's the sort of thing we need. If we want to address that sort of issue, housing value issues and value capture, you have to have higher zoning densities near the train stations. And the exclusivity of the suburbs and how they demand to have every stick of furniture has to be in place for the suburban areas, it really militates against that sort of resolution. Now, I think, you know, that's, like I said, if next time you guys bring up value capture, I said, well, you go capture your value from affordable housing then.
Thank you for pointing out that this really is a very complex issue and really is an issue that needs to be debated by the entire board, not in committee. We have a second information item in the report. Yes.
On a different subject?
Yes.
I'll get
Thank
off
you.
That one. We've gotten a number of reports regarding Connecticut's financial situation and its rollback, for lack of a better term, of a number of capital and operating issues relating to the New Haven line. I was wondering if you could discuss, just for a second, that issue and how it relates to the projects that are on page 56 of the report regarding upcoming issues with regard to New Haven.
Sure. So without
Because it says funded by Connecticut DOT.
CDOT, yeah.
My question is that actually going to happen?
I don't know, right? I mean, I think that they came out, the Connecticut Department of Transportation, who has been, I want to say for the record, a very good partner of ours. We have an excellent working relationship with them. Came out with a press release, maybe 3 or 4 months ago? 2 or 3 months ago, where they indicated in some detail the projects that would have to fall by the wayside if they did not get adequate funding. They are, like we are, in the middle of their legislative session right now. I am hoping that they're able to come to terms with their legislature, on a funding source, a funding mechanism, so that some of the draconian stuff that they put out there will not have to be implemented. We obviously take the lead from them. We're in very close communication with them. You know, as I said, they're sort of in the middle of their legislative process, and I know that there's a lot of close coordination going on their end of things. So I think this is one where we will continue to work with them, but we're going to have to continue to stay tuned to see how their legislative process takes shape over the course of the next several months.
I would assume our plans are directly affected by their plans.
Of course.
And whatever they decide to do, either by eliminating certain capital projects or changing the schedule
of course.
For certain capital projects, will affect our capital plan itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, our capital plan to the extent that it's funded by CDOT. Yeah.
Or either fully or partially.
Yes.
Funded by CDOT.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a good example of that is the option on the MA cars, right? I mean, we have an option on the MA cars. I mean, that would require funding from CDOT. If there's no funding, then there's, exercise of that option. So, yes.
Okay.
Would you keep us apprised going forward?
Course. Kim, is there anything to add?
I mean, the only other thing I would say is that there are some guidelines that they use. If there are projects that are funded through federal funds, those are protected and they will continue. If there are projects that are underway, they will be completed. So currently, the projects that are really at risk are the ones that are not federally funded and also not yet underway. So it's more the future type of projects to proceed. And as Kathy said, we are monitoring the situation very closely.
Any additional questions pertaining to strategic investments in that case?
Actually, just not to beat this dead horse anymore, what I will do on the TOD thing, just as a way of kind of closing the loop on that, we will put together some sort of a chart indicating the existing TOD opportunities, the extent to which affordable housing has or has not come into the situation. I'm sorry, you can't hear? Can you hear me now? We'll put together some sort of a chart, and we'll get it to you in the intervening couple weeks before the April board meeting, so that you'll have that as a piece of information that we can use to guide any future discussions on an MTA-wide basis on that topic. Okay. The second information item is the annual elevator and escalator report, which is also in the book, in case anybody has any questions.
Questions on that? Hearing none?
Okay.
The satisfaction?
Yeah, the third information item is also in the book. We're not going to go through the PowerPoint, but I will give you some high-level points with respect to the 2017 customer satisfaction survey results. On the whole, we're pleased with the results from our satisfaction survey. 89% of our customers were satisfied with Metro North in 2017, which is very slightly below 2016, where we were at 90%. But 3 out of 10 customers were very satisfied with the railroad, and satisfaction with the railroad has risen 16 points since 2014, so we're up quite a bit since 2014. The main reason satisfaction fell in 2017 were on-time performance issues that we experienced just before the survey was distributed. As you'll recall, in May we had a derailment in Rye, which affected service on the New Haven for a couple weeks. Plus, there was a 6% Connecticut DOT fare increase, which took place in December of 2016, and that also affected customer satisfaction in that same time period. If we look at the results by line, 93% of Hudson Line customers were satisfied in 2017, which is a point higher than 2016. On the Harlem Line, 90% told us that they were satisfied, which is down 2 points from the previous year. New Haven Line customer satisfaction fell to 85%, but again, you know, 2 of the issues affected the New Haven, so that was also 2 points below 2016. On the positive side, customers continue to rate our frontline employees very favorably. 95% were satisfied with frontline employee, including 52% who said that they were very satisfied with our frontline employees. 96% were satisfied with the courtesy and responsiveness of our conductors, with almost 6 out of 10 customers rating themselves very satisfied. GCT also continues to please the vast majority of our customers with a rating of 95%. Among reverse peak customers, 88% were satisfied compared with 94% in 2016, so that's down a little bit. And then among west of Hudson AMP customers, 81% were satisfied, down 2 points from 2016. So any questions? That's basically the high level.
Yes, Commissioner Vanderpool.
The survey results were really positive. I was glad to see them. There was one statistic that stood out for west of Hudson, and it was the quality of audio announcements at the station at 47%, which was really low. Why is that? Or why do you suspect that the rating or the satisfaction level was so low?
I know. I think it's because they're inconsistent. That's my frustration with them. So that, you know, you kind of expect to be told when the train is going to come, and sometimes you are and sometimes not. So I think that's part of it. And then there is also, in some cases, on some trains, difficulty hearing anything.
So the one thing that I would say, Veronica, is that we met with Kevin Corbett last week at New Jersey Transit, and one of the issues that came up in that meeting was this issue of coordinating communications to make sure that the message is consistent, and Sue Doring, who's our VP of Customer Service and Stations, is in contact with appropriate personnel at New Jersey Transit and is focused on improving the communications, because this is an area of concern and something that we are actively working on with them.
Just for my general knowledge, sometimes I'm on stations where I hear a conductor make a live announcement. Most of the time they're automated announcements. Particularly they're automated if there's a delay. I only usually hear a live person if there's a track change at the last minute. Is there a standard protocol for how when a live person steps in versus when an automatic announcement is triggered?
I'm actually going to let John answer that, but I would have thought the reverse, that when it was routine, you'd get the automated announcement, because at least in my personal experience, you tend to hear the live person when there's a change. But let me ask John if he could respond to that.
On the M7s and M8s, we have the automated announcements, and as Kathy stated, when it's a routine station stop event, the automated announcements announce, and the conductors really don't introduce themselves into the conversation. We do have we do have unique announcements that the conductors make for special events. For example, the schedule change that went into effect this Sunday, we put out what's called a train service notice, and we asked our conductors to remind customers of the new schedules. Typically at the beginning and end of a month, the conductors actually make an announcement with regards to monthlies and items like that. When we have service disruptions, as you noted, the conductors introduce themselves. So the SOP is that if things are running well with no issues, the announcements from the conductors are minimal. And as there becomes more of a need to inform customers of unique situations, that's when we make the manual announcements.
I don't think I was clear, actually. I meant on the platform, at the station, yes. Yeah.
Not to speak for Sue, maybe Sue could come up, but the general process on the platforms is the same. Our platform PA system does have an automated functionality. So, for example, when trains are running late more than 6 minutes, you'll hear a canned announcement of how late the train is. We also have announcements with regards to slip, trip, and fall issues, and I'll ask Sue to kind of fill in the blanks from there.
Actually, the only other thing before Sue does that I would say is that our PA system in the outlying stations is one of the things that's going to be replaced as part of the CSI project because it is not as nimble as we would like it to be. So that is an element of the CSI project and something that we're actually looking forward to.
So to answer your question, which was, do we have protocols for manual versus automatic? Yes, in fact, we do. We have protocols for all of our communication systems. As Kathy mentioned, the Penta system, which is the one that's our current PA system, it's in a working, acceptable condition. However, we're very cautious not to overstress it. We do try to rely on the automated announcements because they are at scheduled and specific time frames, depending on the information that's being transferred. But we will supplement that with manual when we need to add additional messages as well.
Yes, Randy.
The west of Hudson are all controlled by NJ Transit, so there's nothing that anybody here can do about it.
Nor does it operate in the same fashion. I think that the committee is always pleased to see satisfaction with our employees, so this 52% very satisfied with our frontline employees is very nice to see. The PTC.
So we have the PTC status report, which is in roughly the same format as last month's report. We're not going to go through the report today, but we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. It is in the book.
Questions? Hearing none. May we have the procurements, please?
Good morning. There are 4 procurements in this month's package totaling $36,516,723. There are 2 non-competitive procurements in the amount of $21,516,723 and 2 competitive procurements in the amount of $15 million. There are no ratifications this month. The first non-competitive procurement is a contract award to Jamaica Bearing Company, Inc. in the not-to-exceed amount of $20,516,723 for the purchase of journal bearings and bearing components on an as-needed basis for MNR's M3, 7, 8, and coach fleet. The original equipment manufacturer of these bearings, Timken Company, does not sell its bearings direct to end users. Jamaica is the only approved Timken authorized Timken supplier for the New York region. The second competitive procurement is a request for additional funding in the not-to-exceed amount of $1 million to Dayton T. Brown, Inc. to provide engineering services required to prepare documentation, including the Revenue Service Demonstration Report, to satisfy FRA requirements for positive train control certification. There will be extensive reporting and documentation requirements that must be satisfied in order for MNR to meet its PTC-related obligations. DTB shall be providing a significant amount of engineering support in the preparation of these reports. The two competitive procurements are a contract award to solicit miscellaneous service contracts through an RFP process in a not-to-exceed amount of $15 million to two firms, ETS Contracting and WRS Environmental Services, which will be budgeted for $7.5 million to perform on-call system-wide asbestos, lead, and hazardous material abatement services on a task order basis. May I please have a vote for these procurements presented?
I move these procurements. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there questions or discussion? Yes, Ms.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Does this procurement include labor as well? I'm sorry, the Jamaica bearings procurement.
No, ma'am. This is strictly supply of truck and axle bearings.
Why does it come out of the operating budget as opposed to the capital budget?
Because this is for the running, repair, and ongoing service of the trucks and axles.
How many bearings do you get for $20 million?
It is a significant amount for both the M7 and M8, which is an ongoing process when the wheels are cut and worked with our coach fleet also. I can get you the specific numbers. The M3 is greatly reduced because of the size of the fleet.
Any additional questions? Those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Mr. Jano, may we have the capital construction report, please?
Penn Station Access, the Metro North to Penn project on the Hellgate line. We have received 3 bids for the general engineering contract, and that procurement is underway. Enough said about that, but it is going forward. We extended the planning agreement with Amtrak, which is of some years standing, but in addition to that, we've now we're producing drafts of the agreements that will be necessary to advance the project, the agreement by Amtrak to let us do the work on the Hellgate line and otherwise to physically create the Metro North service and the stations, the 4 stations they'll be required to support it. We have underway a development study with the firm of HR&A, and it's being done in tandem with the city. This goes to the issues that you were touching upon momentarily before, principally the idea of value capture because of the value that presumably will be created in the various areas of the Bronx by the creation of this service. So those, I think, are the major highlights of what's gone on since this committee last heard about it, and I'm going to give a full report at the CPOC meeting this afternoon.
All good news. Questions? Commissioner Mordler.
The 4 stations. Has any effort been done in terms of design, construction, or the like to prepare for the 4 stations?
Well, that's we are actually bidding the design contract right now. So that procurement will come to the board in the next month or 2 in all probability.
I congratulate and thank you.
Okay.
I expected that would make you happy. It makes us all happy.
Makes the borough president of the Bronx happy. That makes me happy.
May we have the monthly reports?
The monthly reports on operations, finances, ridership, and the capital program are in the agenda book. We're not going to go through those reports, but we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Commissioner Mordler.
Kathy, I have every confidence that you'll get this straightened out, but if I am reading the operating report correctly, there has been a 3-fold increase thus far this year on unscheduled engineering problems on Metro North. It's not apparently due to weather because the weather inclement statistics are down, and the result has been that is a primary cause for delay on all of the Metro North lines. Would you tell me why?
Actually, it's indirectly related to weather. If you recall, back in the first 2 weeks of January, we had significant snow events, and we talked about switch failures at interlockings, and we mentioned some issues we had with our switch heaters. Our power department's been working diligently over the last 2 months to replace a majority of switch heaters. We had purchased a newer design switch heater element that over these last 2 events demonstrated was not as effective as the old units we were buying, and our power department currently, I believe, has replaced about 80% of those switch heater elements. So that's what drives the unscheduled engineering failures.
I have no reason to disagree with you other than the fact that if you look on page 148, the number of delays attributable to weather is 739 in 2018 as contrasted with 889 in 2017. You can't have it both ways.
Well, in 2017, we didn't have these severe snow events that we had this year.
And why don't you put that in weather delay rather than in engineering failure?
Because in this case, we actually had an identified known issue with the switch heater elements, and we wanted to be very transparent with regards to what the direct cause of those failures were. We didn't want to bury infrastructure issues under a general weather category.
All right. Assume that I accept that, all right? Page 147, you've got delays on trains really mounting up. Is that also weather?
Yes, it is.
Let me ask you this. I assume that in preparing your schedules for the various trains, you factor in issues ranging from snow to leaves. You do not.
No, there is no significant time added into the schedules for unscheduled weather disruptions or fall slippery rail events. What we do accommodate in the actual schedule is scheduled MFW work and track outages. For example, we've recently put in the schedule for for March with regards to the Harlem line. What actually drives the average delay per train, or what's actually driven that this year, are the significant snow and wind events that causes trees to be down. And in those cases, the average train delay sometimes is between 30 and 60 minutes, which drives the average number up. If you look at a good month like the month of February, the actual number of late trains is down significantly, and in the month of February actually tends to reduce the average delay per train because the trains are only delayed 6 to 10 minutes, and in some cases 10 to 15 minutes. And the reason we don't incorporate those unscheduled disruptions into the schedule is we don't know whether they're going to occur or not. So our customers would be unduly penalized with extended running times during the 80% of the days that we don't have those weather events actually occurring.
Thank you.
Additional question? No?
I do have one other question. Would you look at page 152 of the book? And I assume that when a train stops, it shuts down. I don't understand that characterization.
That comment on the West Hudson Train 66 talked about the actual locomotive failure that physically caused the engine on the locomotive to shut down, which resulted in that train not being able to proceed, and it was subsequently terminated. For example, on EMUs, where we don't have diesel engines, you never would really see that explanation for the actual equipment failure.
And is that the reason, of these weather-related things, the reason for the substantially increased standees on the Harlem line?
Yes, that's part of it. Part of it also is the fact that we've had an increased level of ridership on the Harlem line. And whenever we have an unscheduled service disruption that causes us to cancel trains, the remaining trains that are running do have standees on board. That also has been problematic on our New Haven line, as we've discussed over several meetings, which is, as Kathy stated, we're procuring 60 additional M8s that'll be here late 2019.
Last question, I promise. Can you deal with these unscheduled standees if they become fairly consistent by just adding to the consist?
If we had cars and yard space, yes, we could. That's a significant challenge for Metro North at the moment. We're basically nearing our capacity both on the infrastructure and rolling stock perspective. So we're going to be developing, as Kathy kind of gave to the committee not that long ago, a new fleet strategy paper with regards to how we're going to address future ridership needs, which will be very challenged to address in the very near term.
So are you telling me that we don't have enough cars at the moment to, on a regular basis, deal with this, and that that's an issue that we are going to have to address?
Not to be doom and gloom, but we have just enough cars to run the level of service we're providing. We actually use the minimum number of cars to carry the maximum number of people. Additionally, we're challenged this year and last year as well, because we've removed additional cars from service to apply positive train control. So in addition to the normal maintenance and repair activity that exists, throughout the years, last year and this year we have to apply 1,000 PTC packages on 1,000 units of rolling stock, and we're actively have been doing that, and we will continue to do that. But unfortunately, that then generates challenges for our customers, in particular when we have service disruptions and we have no additional cars to actually run out there.
This issue is the impetus for the white paper that you got and the discussion that we had. I think it was last month?
It was, or 2 months ago, yeah.
And it's 2 months ago. And this is an issue we need to watch very carefully going forward and act on when it comes to us.
I'm trying to emphasize it and to make the point that our effort is to provide increased levels of service, to attract more riders, and yet we have an approaching shortage of equipment to do that. And the better we produce, the worse the problem on standees looks like it's likely to be.
No, I think, Chuck, this is going to be a theme when we head into the conversation about the upcoming capital program. The infrastructure improvements that are going to be necessary to be able to run more service, the fleet needs, all of that is going to come to a head when we start talking about the hard choices that you need to make in connection with the upcoming capital program.
Our infrastructure is stretched on every line to a different extent. It bears a lot of thought, and that's what we're trying to provide you with.
If I may just make the final point, there has been an enormous amount of focus on the New York City transit system, and rightly so. Rightly so. But it seems to me that we have an equal responsibility to the riders of Metro North and of Long Island Railroad, where they probably have the same problem. And the time is fast approaching where we're going to have to deal with that.
That's correct. And it's interesting to me that part of it is because we've been successful in attracting our riders. Is there anything else to come before the committee? In that case, I thank our new president. The committee looks forward to continue working with you, and we hope you have a long tenure.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn. Second. Those in favor.